grass category due to very little oversight and significant conflict of interest. And they've said it's one of the most critical problems within the food regulatory system. And that it basically means that potentially harmful chemicals can be used in food packaging. Now, remember, 80% of the way that we get these toxins, exposure to these toxins, is through our food sources, through the packaging. So, again, this is an area that, although there seems not to be a lot of regulation, there are things that we can do. So what can you do to limit, your exposure? So we just talked about a few moments ago how heating, when you're heating these plastics, that's when the toxins can really leach into your food. Okay, so Temple Talk Tuesday presents Bye Bye Plastics, Making the Transition. So I have a few questions to ask you guys. First, do you think that it's possible to live without plastics?
Well, I think our grandparents today, they live without plastic. So I think it's possible because plastic has not always existed.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is a man-made product.
Okay. Do you think it's possible? I like that angle. Do you think it's possible to live without plastics today?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody think it's not quite possible?
I think it is, but at the same time, we live in a world that is very disposable. Everything is just very fast food, takeout, everything, needs to be in plastic. I think back when our grandparents and great grandparents stuff, it's like they didn't really get rid of anything. They always found use for something and composting and things like that. And I know some people are getting back into that, but that's not everybody. So it may be a little bit hard, but I think if we have materials and things that we can use that wouldn't like hurt the environment and things like that, I think it is possible.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Now I'm asking the question, is it possible to live without plastics? But why would we try to, or maybe even need to? What would be the purpose? Why should we even think about the concept of living without plastics?
Well,
You know,
Jessica, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sister McKinney.
you know, when I think about plastic, I usually think about plastic in the household. Plastic bags, plastic containers,
Mm-hmm.
uh, plastic water bottles or jugs. But also plastics are also used like in your car. You have
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
have plastic bumpers. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's which is not necessarily it is disposable, but not to the point that we're filling landfills with it, and these chemicals are seeping in our water system. So
Mm-hmm.
there are other reasons that we use plastic other than what we normally think. And when I think of plastic, and I think about all the stuff I have in my household.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up a good point. In our car, our clothing, I mean, it's everywhere. Joy, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to share that I've been watching this TV show that I like called Married at First Sight. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
a experiment where people marry someone that these experts, based on their characteristics, lifestyle, background, habits, etc., match them with who they think will be suitable, and they have to live with them for 8 weeks and then decide after the 8 weeks if they want to stay married. Well, there's one-legged girl, she married a guy who's an environmental protection agent, and his whole lifestyle is about conservation and sustainability,
Mhm.
and and they were having their first housewarming party after only being married for 4 days. And she went to the party store, or wanted to go to the party store, and purchase plates and cups and spoons and just typical things, nothing outlandish. And he threw a fit because he was like, we're just going to throw this stuff away. You're hurting the planet. And it kind of
Mm.
made it was very implosive to their marriage, because
Yeah.
she's like, this is our entire lifestyle change for me. And he made her eat trail mix out of a reusable cotton bag, which was just gross. And then for her, it was just like somebody else on the outside looking in and just be like, girl, just do it. You want to be married. This is what the man's values are. But for her, it's just like, do you know how much I have to change in order to
Mhm.
exist, in a way that will maintain peace in a household for this
Yeah,
man, and not being able to use plastics, right? Or non-recyclable things. And so I do think it's possible that we can live without it, but I think a lot of it depends on your desire and your passion to. Like this guy, he could do it, right? But he had a passion and a desire to do it, because so much of the modern conveniences and our lifestyle is structured around using plastic, using disposable things. And so I think it would make it horribly inconvenienced if your mind isn't already set to do that and you have a passion, right, for the environment and sustainability.
for sure, for sure. I personally don't know that it's 100% possible, just like we were saying with it being in our cars and just some of the other ways that we can't get around it. But there are people who are very committed to, living without it as much as humanly possible or within their control. So, speaking of control, what are some ways that plastics get into our bodies? And even kind of just thinking about some of the things that have plastic in them that we don't even initially think of. Like my mom was saying, when she thought of plastic initially, she thought of the things that are in the house. But what are some ways that you guys think the plastic gets into our bodies?
Drinking containers.
Hmm.
Yep.
I was going to
That's a
say
big
that.
one.
Also, sometimes it's the things that you cook with, the utensils, those ones
Hmm.
that the ones that melt and stuff from the heat. These things are releasing into your food, and that's able to get into your body, into your bloodstream.
For sure. Now, we kind of already touched on this when we talked about is it possible to live without plastics, but is our exposure to plastic and the toxins and the materials that plastic is made out of, is that something that we can really control our exposure to it?
Absolutely. I mean, to a degree, right, we can control pretty much everything in our environment. I think it's like you said, there are just some things that are just now just an absolute part of living and existing in our world and our society. But the degree to which you're exposed to it, you absolutely have some control over that.
Thank you. I appreciate all of the feedback and the sharing. So, when it comes to taking control of your health, sometimes despite our best efforts, things can seem out of our control. Think of the pollution that we are subjected to on a daily basis, the toxins in food and water supply, and not to mention the ever, changing guidance on what is okay and what is not okay. I think about some of the oils, how, everyone is saying use this oil, cook with this oil. Then a few years later, or maybe a decade later, you hear, oh, no, 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 that oil is bad. So sometimes it seems like so much can be out of our control, even when we're trying to do the right thing. So much of our life and daily convenience depends on plastic. Saying bye bye to plastics, as this presentation is entitled, can seem impossible. And I have some citations because I'm going to share a lot from some of the research I've done. But just consider what you've eaten today. Perhaps you drank juice from a plastic bottle, maybe coffee from a Keurig pod. For breakfast, you may have had fruit with yogurt. Your lunch salad may have been packed in a plastic container. So just think about how much plastic we get and don't even really give a second thought about it. So, what is the big deal about plastic? When it comes to Temple Talk Tuesday, we're talking about our health and the things that impact our health. And why would plastic and the exposure that we have to the chemicals that are in plastic, why would that be such a topic of importance that we would do a whole Temple Talk Tuesday around it? Well, there's mounting scientific evidence that plastics are harming our health from as early as our time in our mother's womb. So, as we kind of talked about when thinking about just your day to day, most of our food containers, from bottles to the linings and aluminum cans to plastic wraps and salad bins, I even think of our refrigerator, um, are made using polycarbonate plastics, some of which have bioactive chemicals like bisphenol and phthalates. These man-made chemicals can leach from the containers or wrappings into the food and drinks they're holding, especially when they're heated. Now, that's an important part, and we're going to talk about ways to really avoid the heating of plastic. When they're heated is when the chemicals really can leach and can kind of melt into our foods. So, research in 2018 found that more than 90% of bottled water from the world's leading brands was contaminated with microplastics, sparking a review of plastics in drinking water by the World Health Organization. And a lot of these things, don't make the headlines of the news and we don't always hear about. I remember seeing years ago boxed water, and on it it said boxed water is better. And I was like, well, what's so better about boxed water? And I've also seen like boxed chickpeas and different foods that were normally in cans and boxes. And so I do think this was in 2018, a few years ago, but I do think that some of the pressure put on by different organizations has created a push for some alternatives to plastics. I was even using a fork today that said on it, this is plant derived. So again, what's the big deal about plastics? I'm talking about, the chemicals and saying what they are, the BPA, the phthalates, but what is it that is harmful? So through research, the main cause for concern and what the chemicals do in our bodies is they dysregulate and mess with our hormones. Specifically, they mimic hormones like estrogen and interfere with important hormone pathways in the thyroid gland and inhibit the effects of testosterone. Again, I have citations, and at the end, I'll have the full citation. So, humans are exposed to a large variety of toxic chemicals and microplastics through inhalation, so breathing it in, ingestion, that's how we, get it through eating, direct skin contact all along the plastic life cycle. So you can kind of look at this diagram, and under each person, you'll see emissions, exposure, and health. And it can kind of be kind of scary when you look at the list. You'll see affecting the immune system, sensory organs, livers, kidneys, cancers, reproductive health. If you look at the third one, consumer use, and that's how we most often get ingestion. Um, you see the reproductive system, respiratory system. So the ways that plastic is disposed of, transported through refining, manufacturing, and the management of waste, they're all different ways through water, through the air that it can get into our bodies. If we think about microplastics, those are textile fibers like in our clothes, tire dust, and there's chemical additives to those things. So there's the exposure to all of these things, and then there are the ways that it impacts our health. So we look at farmland, we look at air, we look at fresh water and oceans, and all of the chemicals with the plastics are in those things. Again, it can be very overwhelming, very scary, and it can really feel like, man, none of this or a lot of this is not in our control. However, More than 80%, and this is coming from the report Plastic Threatens Human Health at a Global Scale, more than 80% of the exposure to these harmful chemicals comes through our food preparation and storage. So although, we can get it through air, through water supply, direct contact on our skin, most of the exposure is coming from our food preparation and storage. And that's, the place that we have the most control. So that part is a little reassuring when it comes to the whole concept of what is in our control when being exposed to these chemicals that are in plastics. Anyone want to share or have anything to say before I go on? Okay.
I just wanted to add, Jessica, too, that it's interesting when you look at the news and you see different studies that talk about plastics um, causing cancer, because that has been the big thing, that the carcinogens or the chemical makeup of plastics when you heat them or freeze
Mhm.
them, or just BPA, like you'll see the bottles now that say BPA free, how that causes cancer. It's funny, you when you do your own research, you'll see where there are some people who say, no, it's such a minimal amount, it's not going to cause cancer. And then you'll see other research findings say that it does. It just depends on how much exposure you have. I always tell people, look at who's funding the research, right? So
Mhm.
if Procter and Gamble is saying that, and they put a lot of their stuff in plastics, and you're using a lot of their plastics, well, of course they're going to fund the research that's going to come up with results that say no, plastics are fine. Right? But if the research may be funded by an impartial source, maybe a university or a group that's more home to be environmentally friendly, they might say, no, it is harmful. So you always got to look at who's funding or who's sponsoring the research. But at the end of the day, anything that God didn't make, if it's man-made and it's in your body
Mhm.
and there's some sort of exposure to it, to your body long term, you don't need a researcher, you don't need a scientist to tell you that this is going to cause your body some dysfunction or some harm, even if it's not as severe as cancer, or like you're mentioning, issues with thyroid and hormones. You just know God didn't make it, man made it. It's not supposed to be in your body. Something's going to go awry over time at some point.
Thank you, Joy. And you're highlighting a lot of the focus on cancer, and I've been seeing a lot of the focus also on just reproductive health. And I'm going to kind of share some of that, how it's really throwing off hormones and various development that has to do with hormones or that hormones are responsible for. So, the impact of the chemicals in plastics we commonly use for food storage have been studied in both animals and humans. And depending on the type of plastic polymer, the health effects vary from inconclusive to disturbing. And this is kind of an old picture because I see a CD and an old school calculator. But those are just an idea of some of the things with plastics. So, reviews of the literature on the human effects of the chemicals in plastics have demonstrated links between exposures to BPA, phthalates, and other plastic additives and reduced fertility, reduced male sexual function, sperm quality, blunted immune function, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity. In fetuses, BPA exposure was correlated with an increased risk of miscarriage, low birth rate, and childhood obesity. And this is all the scary stuff right now. There are also potential cognitive effects. Particularly strong are the associations between early BPA exposure and altered behavior and disrupted neurodevelopment in children, as well as increased probability of childhood wheeze and asthma. The author of one of the reviews wrote, indeed, children are at particular risk of health effects from these chemicals. AAP said, and AAP is the American Academy of Pediatrics. Hormones act on all parts of the body, and even small disruptions at key moments in development can have permanent and lifelong consequences. So, a lot of the focus that I've found just in my research has been on child development, the impact of plastics, well, the chemicals in plastics on babies in utero, and how it really impacts the hormonal regulation. A 2015 systematic review of children's neurodevelopment and phthalate exposure concluded that prenatal exposure to phthalates was associated with cognitive and behavioral outcomes in children, including lower IQ and problems with attention, hyperactivity, and poor social communication. Newer research has linked prenatal phthalate exposure to an increased risk of language development delays. While it's true that many companies are now manufacturing phthalate or BPA-free products, scientists are concerned about substitute chemicals too. Again, many of them are functionally similar to the chemicals of concern like BPA and BPS. So, the weight of human evidence on BPA continues to mount. So, an associate professor of pediatrics in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health at the University of Washington and Seattle's Children's Research Institute summed up: for phthalates, I do not see any controversies related to male reproductive toxicity, and the weight of evidence is extremely strong. I now consistently say phthalates cause male reproductive abnormalities because the weight of evidence supports it. So she's saying it's almost not controversial. It's almost a given. It's basically accepted, and the evidence is so strong. The weight of evidence supports it. So with all of the knowledge and the scientific research that has been done, we would think that maybe there would be some better regulation. And again, in recent years, with some of the pressure that has been put on by, again, the American Academy of Pediatrics, different environmental groups, there have been some changes. But overall, it's asserted that regulation of chemicals in food containers is still pretty weak, and that right now it's up to us as consumers to manage our exposure to the chemicals in plastic, because there's I don't know how surprising it is, but a lack of regulatory oversight when it comes to the plastic packaging industry. And there have been lawsuits filed against the FDA, and I won't get into all of that. Again, that's pretty controversial, but I will share a bit. So in 1997, the FDA established the Packaging and Food Contact Substances Program. And basically, that was a regulatory system to determine what packaging products were safe. So anyone who manufactures a food contact substance, which includes chemical additives, coatings, paper, or polymers, must first get the okay from the FDA before putting it on the market. However, there was an exception to the rule, and that was for substances that were considered generally recognized as safe, so GRAS. This was a category that initially was created for food items that had a long history of use, like caffeine or sugar, and supposedly have no evidence of harmful side effects. Now, we know that there are harmful side effects to caffeine and sugar, but basically it's saying that this is what this category was meant for. Things that have been used for years and are kind of accepted within society and aren't considered to be super harmful or toxic. But the list of GRAS accepted polymers and packaging is long. Some say too long. And it's been criticized most recently by the AAP. Again, that's the American Academy of Pediatrics. In August of 2018, members of the AAP's Council on Environmental Health noted just how easy it is to get into the GRAS category due to very little oversight and significant conflict of interest. And they've said it's one of the most critical problems within the food regulatory system. And that it basically means that potentially harmful chemicals can be used in food packaging. Now, remember, 80% of the way that we get these toxins exposure to these toxins is through our food sources, through the packaging. So, again, this is an area that, although there seems not to be a lot of regulation, there are things that we can do. So, what can you do to limit, your exposure? So, we just talked about a few moments ago how heating, when you're heating these plastics, that's when the toxins can really leach into your food. So, it's important not to microwave your food in plastic. It's important not to microwave your food in plastic. So, if you have your food, your takeout, your takeaway, and you put it in the refrigerator and you're getting ready to eat it the next day, just take it out, put it in a glass plate or bowl, and then microwave it. Even if possible, when you bring it home, to put it in something that's glass so that you can store it. Now, it does make a difference on how long, I believe, and I'm just kind of saying this just anecdotally. I think that it may make a difference on how long something is in that plastic. So, say you go to the grocery store and you buy some vegetables and you just have them in the bag, the storage bag, those little thin, kind of clear greenish bags. If you have it in there for a few, like an hour or two between the time that you put it in there, finish shopping, and get home, that's a little bit different than something that's sitting in plastic for so long. So if you have takeaway and you keep it in your plastic, it's probably best to move it into a glass bowl, but if a glass storage container. But if you're unable to, at least when you get ready to warm it up, do not microwave foods in plastic. That's one of the number one things that we have control over, that we can try to remember to do. Purchase glass or stainless steel food storage sets. Eat fresh fruits and vegetables when possible so that you can avoid plastic storage containers with chemicals that can leach into your foods. Now, I want to get some feedback from you guys. These first three, how easy, how difficult are they when it comes to implementing them? Just for you.
I guess I have a question. You mentioned the plastic bags, food containers that we have like vegetables in, like the one produce, like you put in lettuce and your different produce. So you're saying that those aren't safe for long periods of time? For what do you consider a long period of time?
So I was kind of saying that because generally speaking, most plastics, due to the chemicals, even the ones that are saying, BPA free, there's growing concern about the alternative chemicals. And I was kind of just saying, not as an expert, but kind of just anecdotally, that I'm guessing that having something in a bag, for an hour or two is probably a lot more safe than something that's sitting in plastic. But a lot of times, like I'm thinking about the lettuce, you do keep that in the bag sometimes when you put it in the refrigerator. So you may want to rethink what may be some alternatives to that. If you have like tomatoes or apples, you usually will take those out and, sit them in the fruit bowl or something like that. But some of the other ones, like I'm thinking about like lettuce or cilantro, even like bags of carrots, we normally will keep those in the bag. So even if you have a food storage container that you can put it in, that may be just more safe. But that was a good question. And that kind of goes back to the convenience and just how so many things are dealing with plastics, that when we start to get into it and think about, oh yeah, that's plastic too, or oh yeah, that's plastic as well.
Yeah, Jessica,
And
I just want to go back to like when we were all in school and we took like chemistry or you took physics and you had to take the lab. And whenever you had to do an experiment involving chemicals where you had to combine a chemical or change something or make a new substance, there was only a few things you can do to cause a chemical reaction. And that was either you heated up the item, or you froze the item, or you spun it around right in the centrifuge. But in order to change the chemical makeup of something, mostly you had to use temperature. So plastic is a chemical, and if you want to change the nature of it so that it then gets into the environment or the food that it's touching, right, as a contact material, change the temperature, right? Put it in the refrigerator or put it in the microwave or heat it up. So I would say no time for that reason, no time in a cool place or a hot place for any of your food to be in plastic is a good idea, because you're, in a sense, you're creating a chemical reaction between the food that's in that plastic bag and the plastic itself, which is a chemical that does not belong in your body.
Mhm.
I love
So,
that, Joy. Thank you. Thank you for that connection and that correlation. And when plastic is made, a lot of times it's heated to be shaped and formed and to be made. And so I'm thinking about that heat component too. But thank you for that. Thinking about the refrigerator, the freezer, and there's so many things when we think about just sometimes the things that um, are frozen. I'm thinking about the smoothies that I like to make, especially when I'm visiting my parents' house. And they're in these big plastic bags that are in the freezer. Now, a lot of things that are stored in the freezer are in cardboard, but then you think about the plastic that's on the inside of it. Now, there are things such as like wax, paper, that you can wrap things in and then kind of just maybe put a little bit of tape on it. But it does really take a lot to try to transition out of using plastics. And as I was saying a few moments ago, so many things we start to think of like, oh man, that's plastic too. Oh man, that's plastic as well. But I think some of the things we can do now that hopefully aren't too difficult. First one is paying attention to temperature. Joy, I just love how you correlated again, just that chemistry. Not microwaving foods and plastics, purchasing those food storage sets, eating fresh fruits and vegetables when possible, and then avoiding plastics with recycling codes 3. That means it has phthalate, excuse me, 6 styrene, and then 7 bisphenols. That's the BPA. So look for BPA-free plastics. And then, of
so,
course,
so BPA free is good. Is okay if it's
yes,
BPA free. So
BPA-free is as of now better.
okay.
Um, I was mentioning earlier that some scientists are even starting to feel concern about some of the alternatives to BPA.
Hmm.
And so I think that's a ever evolving area in two ways. One is that maybe some of the harmful effects we may know later, or on the positive side, because there's so much focus on this, there may be more intentionality of making sure that these alternatives are at least a little more safer than the BPA.
Yeah, because I just bought some storage containers, and I thought they were glass, but when I got them, they weren't glass, they were plastic, but it did say they BPA free. So I was
Mhm.
just wondering. So that's probably better than the current one that I have, then at least.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Especially, I mean, some of the stuff in your home, some of the plastic bowls and containers are from the 90s. So you already know that back then the regulations are bad now. I mean, I remember some of those bowls from when I was a child.
Thank
And
you, Jessica.
Why are you putting them out there like that?
Got the
well,
spaghetti
it's a
free.
good thing that you're able to hold on to things and not be wasteful. But
Yeah,
I'm just
your
saying,
dad is like, why are you telling all my business?
No, I don't. It's just that kind of thing.
he's not. He doesn't care.
He's trying to upgrade. He's trying to upgrade.
Yeah, I know. Look, he bought the whole set. Yeah, but so basically, I was saying that to say that the ones that he has, the older ones, I'm pretty sure that these new ones are a lot better than those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And those have been through a lot of just through a lot. So and as always, there are things we can't avoid. And so we're always going to pray for God's covering. One thing that I love about him is he's always stepping ahead, kind of mitigating circumstances, things that are meant for our harm. Even if they do harm us in some way, he finds a way to kind of figure it and work it out for our good. And so we're always doing what we can. When we have knowledge, we take it and we do the best that we can with it. But God's covering, is always a step ahead. And that's something that we can rest assured and have trust in, that Even sometimes if we take things in that are toxic or harmful, there's that verse that says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." So sometimes even taking in those things, God will just say, "You know what? I'm going to just neutralize that in your body." And so he'll do whatever he sees fit. Again, we have knowledge for a reason, and we do the best that we can, and trying to really limit our exposure to plastics as much as we can, but we're always going to pray for his covering.
Jessica, I just wanted to add too, though, God protects us, but he tells us in Hosea 4 that my people are destroyed
Mm,
Like a
for,
lot,
for a lack
like
of knowledge. And
thank you, Joy.
for that reason, like if we reject the knowledge that he gives
Mm,
us,
mhm,
then we're essentially destroying ourselves. And so that's why God allows us to be exposed to these things. So that not so that we can feel the pressure and like, oh, I got to now do these things, but at least we have the knowledge to pray and say, Lord, I now know this. Give me the strength, give me the fortitude, give me the willpower and the wherewithal. Remind me, right, through the Holy Spirit, that when I go to the store the next time to pick up some of the tempered glass sets, right? And
mhm,
actually, you save money because those tempered glass sets, I've had some tempered glass bowls now for going on 12 years, and they look the exact same that they did when I first bought them, and they don't chip like those plastics because we talked about
mhm,
temperature, freezing, heat. But sometimes in just using those bowls with a metal fork, you release plastic, right? And they start to chip and wear away, and then you're
mhm.
replacing them constantly. But you get you a good glass bowl set. That thing will last you forever and a day as long as you don't freeze it to the
Break
point
it.
where it breaks, yeah, or you don't drop it on the floor. But I mean, you can save a lot of money with those glass bowls, if you treat them well and take care of them, and they're not putting all those chemicals into your body. So not only does God give us this knowledge expected to use it, but then He rewards us in all kinds of ways, right, for using wisdom, right?
Mhm.
We should flock to wisdom. If we think about Proverbs,
Mm,
it always talks about how wisdom is something we should seek after, right, and hold dear. So because there's so many blessings in it, not wisdom for wisdom's sake, but the benefits that come from using wisdom. It's just a wonderful, beautiful gift from God.
thank you so much, Joy. Thank you.
Amen.
We're blessed to get new knowledge that we didn't know before. It's really a blessing.
Hmm.
So, nice set of glass storage containers. And the top is plastic, but just trying not to have the food touching it as best that you can, or even sometimes putting like a cloth or
Napkin.
the parchment paper
Mm.
right over. But I kind of just don't fill it to the top, basically. Free plastic alternatives. So instead of plastic sandwich bag, reusable containers of different sizes, foil or beeswax cloth. Now, sometimes you gotta be careful with that foil. Instead of bottle shampoo, conditioner, or soap, bar soap, shampoo, or conditioner. I love Castile soap. I probably go through it too fast. I may go through a bar in 2 weeks, but that's something that you can wash your hair with. I've seen so many bars that you can wash your hair with. Conditioner may be a little bit different, but you can even make your own conditioners with honey, shea butters, mayonnaise, just different things. But some of those things that we don't even think about, like the lotions and things, are in plastics. Now, we're finding a lot more beauty items in glass. I see that more with the oils, like the body oils and things like that, but you can find them. But I would really consider looking at doing the bar soaps, toothbrushes. That's one of the things that you normally don't think of is, oh man, that's plastic, but metal or wood toothbrushes, instead of plastic deodorant sticks, cardboard deodorant sticks, or glass containers. I have not seen the refillable glass or metal containers for floss. And I guess the reason why the toothbrush and the floss is highlighted on here is because, we're getting close to our bloodstream. A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, hopefully your gums aren't bleeding a lot, but sometimes that does happen. Um, plastic feminine products, menstrual cups, even though I think, well, no, those are silicone, not plastic. And then down, you just see the plastic straws for the glass, silicone, and metal straws, plastic containers for mason jars, plastic water bottles, excuse me, for stainless steel water bottles, plastic ice cube trays. And that's one that I didn't even think of, the plastic ice cube trays,
Yeah.
to silicone ice cube trays. They probably have, I'm sure they have metal ones as well.
Yeah, that's what we had in the old days, metal ones.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have plastic. For plastic, we had metal ones.
Yeah. So thank you all. I meant to change this picture out. It's very unrelated. But these are the citations um, for the information in today's session. Okay.
Thank you, Jessica. I have a question for you,
Yeah.
just for you to put on your therapist hat. For
Now,
people.
real quickly, is my screen still sharing or is no
No,
longer
you're
sharing?
good. It's
Okay.
So
just us now. But for
Okay.
those of us who, just think, wow, this is a huge lifestyle change and it's a lot of inconvenience. Like, what can we do to kind of prepare ourselves mentally to get used to these changes, from things that we've been doing for some of us 20, 30, 40, 50 years now. Like, and we see this and it's daunting and it's just like, well, can't teach an old dog new tricks, and if we all got to die from something. So how do we kind of set ourselves up to be successful and even wanting to make these changes and that benefit us?
So I would just start with one thing. Start with one thing and make it a practice in doing that, and then you can add something else and add something else. To me, the one of the easiest starting points is not microwaving food in plastic.
Hmm.
So when you have your carry out, when you have what, you're trying to get rid of those plastic containers and just really trying to put your food on your plate and microwaving it. I would say for me, that's an easy starting point. Everyone may have their own starting point that may be easy, but I would say just starting off with one thing that you
Hmm.
feel like is feasible, you can do, and just try to do that for a while. And then after a while, say, is there something else I can add to this? Is there another way I can cut down? But getting the food storage container sets, I think is one easy, relatively easy way to start in the being cognizant of the heating and even like your utensils that you used to cook with. Um, Trying to look for those in like bamboo, other types of wood, stainless steel, things that are not plastic as well. So
Mhm.
just trying to find a good starting point.
So silicone is okay though?
Um, there may there may be some deeper research needed into it, but as of now, um, it's seeming that way.
Hmm. I guess another question is, you mentioned microwave several times. Is microwave just as dangerous as plastic though? I mean, are there any side effects for microwaves?
A few years ago, I was looking that up because I have a really good friend who does not use the microwave at all, avoids it at all costs, will reheat food on the stove. From what I saw, and of course, there are sometimes conflicts of interest in different research findings, but from what I saw, I found that the microwave is generally safe. It's just another way of technology for producing heat waves. Your oven does the same thing and your toaster does the same thing. It's just a different way of technology, basically, is what I gathered when I did, when I looked into it. But you may want to just do some of your own research.
Mhm.
On the
So that,
silicone thing, Elder McKinney, silicone is also made from chemicals, but the thing about silicone versus plastic is that it doesn't denature or break down as fast. So it's not going to be as harmful if you take it through some sort of reaction, right? To
mhm.
alter the chemical makeup of silicone, like plastic does. And silicone is even more environmentally friendly. Like silicone in the ocean is not going to cause baby whales to get caught up in it and die, because it's going to stay in its form. Whereas
Mm,
plastic tend to just breaks down, and wildlife eats it, and
mhm.
it's just made for single use. So you have like the European Union now, their first step in kind of addressing how plastic impacts people, as far as us being exposed to it, and how plastic impacts our environment. The European Union in 2021 decided that no company can make what they call single-use plastics. If you are going to make a
Mhm.
plastic, you have to be able to use it multiple times for multiple purpose and be able to recycle it, just because it's just so flimsy and it gets into the environment, the earth, just like it breaks down and gets into our body and our bloodstreams. And that's kind of what makes it so dangerous.
So what do they use for like, what do the European Union and what do they use for like their produce there, since they don't use plastic? Those are
They
single use.
Yeah, so they encourage, like, when people go to the market, to take like net bags, or have like paper bags, right? Because paper is recyclable and biodegradable, right? So they're encouraging people to, if they do use the plastic, make sure it's a type of a plastic bag that you can use over and over again.
Okay.
So like the
Mhm.
flimsy little fruit bags we get, you can really only use that one time.
That one time,
Yeah,
right?
'cause you breathe on that, it got a hole in it, and oh, it's over.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of the way the rest of the world is going. And I think the US may be there shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, Jessica, I don't really use a microwave either. It's very rare occasions. I don't even own one actually. So sometimes I use my landlord's, or if I need to heat up something at work, and it's usually in a just my oatmeal and stuff in like a coffee cup.
Mhm.
But I don't, because I don't like how food tastes after it's been microwaved.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like it's not the same. It just pulled, something out. And even just minimizing the aluminum foil as well. I feel like the paper bags are good, but like you can't use them for everything.
Mhm.
And me and my sister always laugh about the plastic bags that used to give them Stop and Shop, because I'm like, that's generational. That Black people use, that's a hair conditioning bag. That's a bag for your lunch. That's a bag to carry stuff in. I mean, you use those bags for everything. You've got plastic bags inside of plastic bags for years. So definitely multi-purpose for us. But again, we're trying to do the best that we can, and trust God to do the rest. Because it's not just also for our body, but it is for the environment as well. And I was just thinking about what Brother McKinney said, about the ice trays, how they didn't even have silicone back then. So then it was like you also just kind of seen the changeover from things that we used to use that were like metal or glass,
Mhm.
because we used to use mason jars for a cup of cold water or lemonade or something like
Mhm.
that. And now it's like these plastic bottles. And honestly, I don't believe everything is BPA free. I think they slap that on there, and because it sells, when people are very health conscious these days, environmentally conscious. But I do try to do the best I can. But I definitely don't like stress myself out about it. But I do have a lot of Pyrex glass bowls and stuff like that. The only thing with being glass, I'm used to just throwing it in the fridge, or something in the freezer, and then I forget and that thing like breaks. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot about it. So that's my struggle with glass, but I do like how it keeps things much better, but then also it's hard for me with plastic, because when I'm traveling, those little bottles are convenient, for when the TSA people are harassing you about how much you can carry and you can't carry, because you're not going to throw out, my hair supplies and stuff. So
No, you can
it's
get the
definitely.
glass 3-ounce bottle sets off Amazon.
Mm.
Okay. Oh, they have them in glass. Okay,
Mhm.
nice. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into those. Thank you.
Jessica, something you said that really made me go, like, say things that make you go, How you talked about like there's not much regulation around this. And as I just shared, like in other parts of the world, they're thinking about these things. They're thinking about the health of the people. But it seems here in the United States, there are very few things that are regulated the way that they should be. And it's just like,
Mhm.
is that on purpose, right? Is it population control?
Well, it's a dollar figure. I mean, because
Capitalism.
regulation causes the companies they have to do something they normally wouldn't. The
Mm,
bottom line is they want to make the product as cheap as they can. But if the government come in and regulate it, big business doesn't like that at all. And
yeah, they're
that's
gonna have
the
to pay more.
yeah, and
Mm.
that's the number one reason why we don't have as much regulation is because big
Yeah.
business fights it all the time. It's hard to get things passed
Oh yeah.
because of yeah.
And those
Yeah.
same big businesses are the ones who are funding the campaigns for the
Right, exactly,
make those
exactly.
laws, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know I just can't wait for to live in the kingdom
Come
Mhm.
on.
where the
Yeah.
government is on the shoulders of Jesus himself, and
Come on.
Mm.
he don't have to Jesus will never be bought out by big business.
That's
Yeah.
right.
You know what I mean? The only big business is his father, and the only business he's in is loving us and caring
Yes.
for us.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I mean, it
Yeah.
just these kind of things just make you long for heaven because it's just like
Yeah.
plastic isn't a new thing. Plastic has been around since I don't know the 1940s, the 1950s,
50s.
and
Yeah.
we still can't figure out a way to make it without killing everybody because somebody
Mm.
want to make a dollar. Like these are the kind of things like if you don't have a relationship with God and you don't long to be lit to live in the earth made new one day, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's like that song, I
Mm.
love God. You don't love God? What's wrong with you? Because it's enough to make you go crazy. Like not only do you have to think about your own personal issues and things you go through in this life, but then you have to think about how Satan uses these money grubbing, hungry capitalist
Mm.
corporations to further endanger you and destroy you, right? He's
Yeah.
seeking whom he may destroy. And if he can't destroy you through stress, good Lord, he's gonna try to destroy you through the food you eat that came in a plastic
Mhm.
bag.
Mhm.
Mercy.
So I thank God for the kingdom, and I just God appreciate that you added on the end that what we can't do on our own because it's a lot. God
Mhm.
will cover us
Mhm.
and keep us, and so until we get to the kingdom, and we can have that assurance, that if we use the knowledge He's given us, He'll take care of the rest.
That's right.
Amen.
I know I
Amen.
have a friend who travels a lot, especially over to Europe, and whenever they have these outbreaks, like shingles or whatever, they always get some kind of medication over there, and they're like it works amazingly because they have very strong regulation. They go as natural as possible when they are prescribing you things, whereas he was like, here they don't. And, you know, you could, they can give you whatever and it can have an effect on you and it's not really taking care of the problem at hand. But down the line, you're suffering from whatever they prescribe you. So he's always saying, you got this eczema thing. I'm gonna get you some of the stuff that they give me over there because it's more natural and they regulate it really heavily. He's like, you're gonna see it's gonna work. So yeah, I'm still waiting on that that sample. But you just see the difference, and sometimes I think, is a dollar really that important than a human life? And when you're talking about this country, yeah, it is. You see it every day. What the dollar backs, as opposed to really, helping to preserve human life.
Now in Europe, they are going to take 50% of your income in taxes, though. But you're
They
going to
do
take
got
our
to help.
money. At least look out for me.
Exactly. Yes. Still getting something good in exchange. Now I feel bad because I've been trying to really be very bare with my products that I use on my skin.
Mm,
And so I just went back to just straight up the Vaseline. But now we're talking about plastics, and then I'm like, here I go contributing to the problem. But I'm like, it's just something that just helps. It just helps me where a lot of other things I use just they don't. So yeah, help me Lord with that one. We're gonna have to find a glass to put it in or something. But I do recycle a lot. Like most of the times for trash day, my majority is things that are recyclable.
Mm.
So I'm helping the environment still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad this wasn't a session where we have to list out where we are not being environmentally sustainable because I'm guilty as charged. I know I can do better, but Jessica, I
Mm.
do appreciate this reminder, and I
Mm.
appreciate you just giving us again this knowledge to do something to take care of ourselves, and then just for being real about, look, hey, this is the low hanging fruit. Stop putting your food in the bowl in the microwave.
Mhm.
You know, start with that, because any and all of us, we can do that, right? We
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's easy and simple, but that's probably the most impactful of all the suggestions you had on
Mhm.
that last slide, right? Because that's something
Mm.
you're ingesting and putting in your body, where a lot of the other things
Mhm.
are going on your body. So
Mhm.
thank you for,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I
I,
think it goes back. Oh,
I was gonna had a suggestion for Crystal. She said she didn't use microwave. She may want to consider the air fryer.
Mm.
Uh, Yeah, and I
Okay.
mean, yeah,
oh
because that
yeah,
way,
for sure.
yeah, and that way, it's convenient and it's not quite as quick as microwave, but I think it's similar to it uses air to heat it as opposed to the microwaves. So supposedly it may be an alternative to the microwave.
It's a
Okay.
good
And
Yeah.
and again, with the statistic that was presented is that the 80% of how we get the toxins is through our ingesting of the food.
Mhm.
So yes, you put your beauty products, on your skin, so there is some direct skin contact, but I think really focusing on the ingestion, the
Mhm.
food when you're ingesting your food.
Yep.
Amen. I have a question. So we talked about not warming up the plastic, but is it
Mhm.
okay to store something in the refrigerator? Like I had bought a pineapple, fresh pineapple, and diced it up, and I had stored it in a bowl in the refrigerator. Is that something that's okay to do, or should that bowl as well be glass
You wanna get that in glass. You
in
wanna get
glass?
those
Okay.
set of glass storage containers for sure.
Okay.
especially since the pineapple has
That's it.
naturally acidic.
Mm.
Mm. Oh, okay.
Very good point. That's
Wow.
so true.
Didn't think of that.
That's that wisdom right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, pineapple has like some very strong naturally occurring, like bromine, and bromine
Mm-hmm.
gets in your body. You can do a lot of things for your body just because of the strength of it. So you can imagine that it's probably breaking down the plastic too,
Wow.
Like people
Right.
take pineapple as a vasodilator, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helps with inflammation. So yeah, it's naturally occurring, but it probably has some impact on that plastic too. So that's a very good point when you're thinking about acidic foods and foods that have different phytochemicals in them. That's a very good point.
Wow. Amen. This has been so good. Thank you
Hmm.
so much, Jessica. Amazing, amazing session as always.
Praise God. Okay, well, I guess I can wish everyone a good and safe night. We can pray out. Um,
I'll pray,
I'll
Jessica.
get okay, thank you.
I saw your wheels turning. All right, let's bow for prayer. God, we thank you so much for this presentation tonight. Thank you for Jessica. Thank you for giving her wisdom and being with her as she researched this topic for us and just giving us yet another way to care for our temples. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, that there is always an answer and we don't have to fret over these things. But once we have the knowledge, we can give them to you, and you will empower us and equip us, Lord, to make better choices, Lord, for our bodies and for our health, Lord, because you wish above all things that we would prosper and be in good health, Lord. I pray, Lord, as we go out and we look for those glass containers, Lord, that you help us to find those good deals on Amazon, Lord. Let it be 50, maybe even 60% off, Lord, for us. Help us, Lord, as we remember these things. When we go to put that plastic bowl, Lord, let the Holy Spirit stop us and tap us on our shoulder and say, don't do that. That's not good for you. And every single time, Lord, you be there to make the decisions for us, Lord, as our Father and as our God. Again, thank you for everybody who's come on tonight, and thank you for everybody who's listening online, Lord. I pray that you bless them as well, and that you allow everyone, Lord, not only to benefit, but to share it with somebody else so that they can benefit as well. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Everybody have a great night.
Okay, you too.
Good
God bless
evening.
everybody.
God bless.
Hi, Brother Isaac.
Hi, Isaac.
Here he is.
God bless.
Hi, Isaac.